those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. Yes, I was free from care, all was bright summer there. Dark days to me were fair, down among the canebrakes, down among the canebrakes, on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. There lived my mother dear, gone from this world I fear. There rang our voices clear, down among the canebrakes, down among the canebrakes, on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. There lived a lovely one who, like the rest, has gone. She might have been my own, down among the canebrakes, down among the canebrakes, on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. Long years have glided by, since then I breathed each sigh. May I return to die, down among the canebrakes, down among the canebrakes, on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more.
What's happening? Benton here. Hopefully the road noise is not too bad. We've got rainy day in Los Angeles. Thank you for the likes. Appreciate everybody liking the stream. And I don't even know how to begin this thing, which is rare for me. How about your standard rambling? What about that? Perhaps. So yeah, I've prepared to post up in the car all day. Fortunately, it's already rained a little bit. And hang on, let me put the earbuds in just so that I won't have to listen to the road noise so much. Hang on. There we go. Much better. Talked to my mama yesterday. Did I mention that? Perhaps. Just a moment. Let's tell the earbuds not to connect. All right. Good deal. And my grandfather, my famous grandfather, I remember as a kid he had this saying he would repeat to me. And I was quite young, and my mother brought it up to me, and I never remembered the actual, I could only remember bits and pieces, and I had her text me. She recited what she remembered of it. And I said, text that to me if you would. And I don't think she got it correct, so I think we have a piece of it. And I'm going to have to ask my dad if I ever talk to him again. But and they're already hooping and hollering outside the car. So let me chill out here. Bear with me if you would. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the replay crew. I finally ordered a microphone, one of those wireless Bluetooth lavalier microphone sets, and that will arrive most likely to an Amazon locker today, but probably going to be reined in the car all day. And I'll get back to grandfather and his saying here shortly. And I had no idea. Thanks. Shout out to Jimmy Kimmel. I saw a local Los Angeles news station had like a 2.5-minute blurb about Jimmy Kimmel, temporarily suspended. And then at the end of the segment, they teased the weather. Rain in the forecast. I said, well, shit, I probably ought to check the forecast, and found out, oh, it's going to rain all day tomorrow. Better go get my supplies and be ready to post up in the car. It's supposed to rain like up to 1/2 inch, so fortunately it stopped raining long enough for me to walk a few laps here and get the blood flowing. No morning constitutional, but that's all right. And had no plans to go. I, in fact, had just returned to the car with the eggs. Usually I get the eggs in the morning, but bebopping around town and doing those IRL streams got me off my game yesterday. So then I went, filled up my water jugs, got some canned beans, and charged up my power bank. That's the main thing. Charged up the power bank. Went back for more eggs just in case. So I believe it's supposed to rain through tomorrow morning. And as a homeless person, I'm rarely, if ever, been interested in getting wet or rained on. So, in fact, for a time, carried a full rain suit, actually, a proper rain suit. Either way, and by carry, I mean 5 pounds of rain suit everywhere I went for a long ass time. In a backpack, 4 pounds of rain suit probably. But yeah, Grandpappy's saying, so let me find it. I wrote it down somewhere. Let's get organized here. Where are we at? Well, standard practice, everything lost in a car at least once a day. How is this even possible? I don't know. Good question. Oh, there they go. All right. Here's the saying, but I don't think this is how it went, but this is probably most of the world's words, rather. But he would say, you're a grasshopper, and this word, the second word is not pronounced correctly. It's pronounced, like somebody where I'm from. Grasshopper dominical ding dong dally in a cane brake. He would tell me that. And I never thought too much of it, but apparently I was so young when he started saying this to me. My mom said I would just always respond with, I'm not a grasshopper. And Of course, if anybody's seen the TV show Kung Fu, there's a particular connotation for grasshopper. And give me just a moment to bring up the dictionary here. Grasshopper. Grasshopper, noun, figuratively a young student in the initial stages of training who has been chosen on account of their obvious talent. And then with the recent spiritual topics and biblical verses around John, is it 14, 16? All right, let's go to the Bible here. Trust in the Apostle Paul. Remember, kids, if you think you're going to serve Jesus, and I'm not saying that the being, not you, the listener, but I'm not saying that one is necessarily doing that or interested. But remember, anybody that thinks they're going to serve the Lord Christ Jesus, you must accept the Apostle Paul, right? Don't forget, and that's sarcasm. Hopefully, that's understood. John 15:16, ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that ye should go and bring forth fruit, that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. May give it to you. Either way. The ordination, perhaps, some acknowledgement of a dominical, right? Not dominical, dominical. So what does dominical mean? Dominical adjective form of or pertaining to Jesus Christ as Lord. So probably I should have read that before I read that Bible verse, but that's okay. You folks can figure that out. Of or pertaining to Jesus Christ as Lord. Then number 2, archaic, of or pertaining to the Lord's Day, Sunday. 3, historical, of or pertaining to the ancient system of dominical letters used for determining Sundays, particularly Easter Sunday, in any given year. And it also means, under the third definition, figuratively obsolete of printed text in a large size. And then 2, figuratively obsolete, red or ruddy. And if anybody's ever heard these, what is that, the, I forget what they call themselves, the black Hebrew Israelites, they like to talk about, Esau described as ruddy in the Bible, which means red. And then, them construing that to mean the white man in some way. Being translucent skin and able to see the blood, which is, not really correct necessarily, but certainly not a bridge too far. So the noun form, dominical, a person who keeps Sunday, whoa, there goes the phone, as a day of rest, but does not regard it as representing the Sabbath of the Old Testament of the Bible. And then number 3 definition, obsolete, the Lord's Day, Sunday. But it also, under that same definition, short for dominical letter. And dominical letter would be, hang on. I got a link. Oh, there it is. Any of the first 7 letters of the alphabet used in religious calendars to mark the Sundays throughout the year and determine dates such as Easter Sunday. And when I was growing up and, in the same area as my grandfather, Sunday really would have had more of a connotation of, everything's closed. So there's not really much to do whether a person recognizes the Sabbath, so called, or not. And then, now we're already getting into a perhaps a Jewish versus a is it goyim, or there's another word for a non-Jew. I forget what it is, but either way, I'm sure you folks know way more about that than I do. Most of you. So a ding dong dally. Let me go to my. Oh, and I posted all of this on my post tab. I posted that song that I played at the first of the stream, and then in the comments, I actually defined all of these terms in doing my research to not have to write this all down. So, ding dong. I actually I see a typo. It says ding ding dally, but it's supposed to be ding dong dally. What's up, Rick? An idiom that means to waste time or dawdle, and which would I'll get to that context. We need to define cane brake first. A thicket of giant cane, a type of bamboo-like grass that was once common in the wetlands of the southeastern United States. And Benton is from a wetland area of the southeastern United States, lest we forget. So interesting. And as I aged, I just assumed that was a thing he told to all the children, but I really have no idea if that was the case. And then, seemingly cane brake, it doesn't necessarily have to be a thicket of giant cane. It could probably be, you know, um, taller grass near a body of water, perhaps. And then now we get into connotations of Psalm 23, made to lie down in green pastures and lie beside the still waters. But then, that song that I played, the lyrics hint at possibly a man knowing a woman in a thicket of tall grass near a body of water, perhaps. And then apparently there's a bunch of blues or Negro spirituals that do get more directly into the potential sexual connotations. But even, in the innocence of youth, perhaps, hiding away from work, to perhaps not be seen as acknowledged by the ding dong dally and the cane brake. Right. But certainly encoded with mysteries here. Now I see Freedom Grower down there in the comments. Are you obligated to be here, sir? Is it tea time and there's just nothing else on YouTube? I'm not really sure. Right? Is Dick a non-dissident cisagent who's more or less obligated to be here contractually? Right. Who is Dick contracted with to be here right now? Or is it just Benton is so entertaining? Right. Maybe it's just this the novel and interesting discourse. Right. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Yeah. And being perhaps mocked from passerbys. And there is something interesting about humanity where, um, many folks, for whatever reason, will uh, be compelled to, when they hear someone such as myself speaking, to begin making their own utterances and mouth noises, which is fine. I mean, that's okay. And I do occasionally just hear random mouth noises and utterances, but it definitely seems to occur far more frequently when I'm on about something. That's all right. Sysigent, Dick, and see, this is Dick is probably not obligated, or maybe he's pretending not to know, but the title of a recent stream, sir, Sysagent or Systems Agent. And on that stream, which I suspect you heard, so I'll forgo putting full efforts into re explaining, even though that is sort of, my own way is to seek to explain these things. But uh, I use the definition of the terms to more or less show that everyone here serves as systems of agents of the system, whether they want to or not. So a dissident sysagent or systems agent would be one who is still, uh, and this ties in with my ideas of not being able to fully opt out of the system no matter what one does, this idea of living off grid or separating themselves from society, which is simply not possible. For society is still going on in the being's head as long as thoughts are being generated and experienced, right? But the dissident having a particular meaning, so that would be an adjective describing a systems agent's performance within the context of this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. So, but anyway, that's if you're really interested, taking you at your word. If you're actually interested in knowing, there's an entire stream about it. If you'd like to check it out, fast forward through the first 30 minutes of rambling, and then it's there, buried in plain sight, perhaps. Grasshopper Dominical, ding dong dally in the cane brake, and then Dominical being a mispronunciation of Dominical. So yeah, fascinating. Which brought us to the song that was played at the top of the stream. And I've just now begun researching this morning. So what to make of it? Not quite sure. Not quite sure. And then this is also the man who used to tell me as a young boy, uh, uh, "You're a good boy when you're asleep." All right. And my grandfather's very charming fella, and certainly as probably the most famous person in our town when I was growing up. Um, well, certainly would have been. Not that that's saying a lot, but it was national news when he passed away. New York Times, ESPN Sports Center did a little piece on it, and so there's a certain amount of and he's confident anyway, but he's probably used to people seeking him out, for his pronouncements, and then I'm assuming he was a churchgoer, but of all my family, he seemed like he had some sort of spirituality to him, and maybe perhaps some wisdom. Of course, let's not forget this guy got famous by being used by the NFL, which is rooted in Freemasonry. And in fact, my father told me that my grandfather, they both attended the funeral of a football player. I believe it was Red Parker, who you can Google Red Parker football, and there's something there anyway. He might be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not exactly sure. My grandfather's not, but after the ceremony was over, my grandfather remarked to my father that was a Rosicrucian funeral. And in typical Benton fashion, my dad apparently did not bother to say, well, what the fuck does that mean? Yeah, let's just let it be a mystery. But I guess that's more fun, the mysteries of life or death, the mysteries of death, perhaps. And then Benton, right, in the context of the definition of a cane brake, Benton means something like town or city, uh, you know, in the bent grass. Yeah. Let's double check that. I'm going from memory. So what does this all mean? I don't know. Surname, yeah, let's go. Well, yeah, bent grass it means, and it also means so part of it means bent grass, and the other part means enclosure, settlement, or town. From either Old English or I don't know. I don't know what some of this means. The etymology. We'd have to get Wizard on it, I guess. El Perro. Not completely sure. And I'm boring everybody here. And well, Dick says, I get it. I have not taken any oaths, and I do not report to anyone other than the all that is. Well, yeah, every knee shall bow. Is there some acknowledgement of an every knee shall bow? There, Mr. Dick. But either way, that's really none of my concern. Although, since I'm thinking about it, it was interesting to click on Modern Men Leaving Again stream or Lost Again or whatever it is, Losing Again, I don't know. And Dick responding to something having to do with one Paul Unslaved, if anybody knows who this is. And, apparently in response to something that had mentioned at the level of Paul's behavior, Dick came to the defense of, well, is that just possibly a test, right? And the way the test was, the way the thing that could have been a test was presented, it immediately reminded me of, and I'm again not a Bible expert, but notions around Abraham and Jacob and Isaac, and then whichever one of them that in the Old Testament, God, air quotes, because remember, multiple gods in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, but, you know, um, certainly not the God is love version. Could love ever test someone in that way? Could love ever suggest to one of its potential servants to say, hey, I'm going to need you to go ahead and sacrifice your son here, go up that mountain and, offer up your son to me as a test, right? And in that story, and I may be getting the players wrong, but, in the story, Abraham proves and passed the test, presumably, but then, air quotes, God stops Abraham. And again, I haven't looked this up, so I might be misquoting some of this, so do your own research as always. But, so then, but presumably Abraham was going to go through with as he was commanded, again, proving himself to be a good little authoritarian, right? And so that's what I thought about in the context of that test. But then would that not put Paul enslaved in the position of the authoritarian who must be obeyed, even if it's merely a test of one's obedience, right? And again, Benton doesn't have a dog in the hunt. I mean, you folks can do whatever you want. Um, you know, as a person utilizing critical thinking, um, I wonder if anyone else had the same thoughts. And I typed it into the live chat to more or less no reaction, which, it's fine. Not worried about that. But imagine defending such behavior as well. It could have been a test, right? And this is in fact the basis for a lot of people who are anti-Christianity is this idea of like, well, what sort of so-called loving heavenly Father would, create a hell realm and, out of love and subject people to it, and what kind of loving God would, um, would test one of its servants in such a way, right? And again, certainly would be authoritarian, lest we forget. So I don't know, just in a thought experiment of my own making, perhaps. Rick took the Boy Scout oath, he said. Now, I said contract, right? I said contractually obligated. So now we get to look up the meaning of contractually obligated, because oath was not my term. Dick then, he changed the context and to something that I did not actually say. He went to oath from contract. So let's go ahead and define contract and see how many, um, you know, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever it is from contract to oath, right? And this does show you, and again, the title of the stream, the best demons money can buy, right? I have not taken any oaths. So is it possible that Dick has answered my question seemingly, but is using the term oath when it's possible that that's not what I meant? So contract is, noun, an agreement between two or more parties to perform a specific job or work order, often temporary or of fixed duration, and usually governed by a written agreement. Synonyms: compact or pact. So we haven't made it to oath yet. Then 2, legal, an agreement which the law will enforce in some way. A legally binding contract must contain at least one promise, i.e., a commitment or offer. Now, offer is interesting in this context because of Benton's own descriptions of the realm, the vacuous, illusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. In each new illusory moment, now it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone, my own assertions around the realm is always offering the being, here's your opportunity to identify with this strong delusion of this place, versus correctly identifying within oneself with, again, if the being is possessed of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And that's also, Dick, we're back to the every knee shall bow, which you yourself seems to have hinted upon with the I do not report to anyone other than the all that is. See, and then could that not be construed to mean the God of this world, or the prince of the power of the air, or principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places? And again, we're back to the best demons money can buy. And so, in the context of a Paul enslaved, is there, that seems to be some version of a performance of allegiance there, Dick, to say, well, maybe there's an accusation that seems to be quite severe or serious against Paul enslaved. So have you thought about the possibility that the authoritarian is behaving in a way to that seems to seek obedience, but perhaps it's for the being's own good, right? Interesting performance, Dick. And again, at this point, it's neither here nor there from Benton's perspective, other than just curiosities and food for thought. So back to the contractually, my word, which Dick has then, he's answered me, but using a different term that I didn't use. So let's see if we can get to oath from, but we've made it to offer, which does tie in with some of my own recent discourse. We've already made it to offer by Okay, so a commitment or offer by offeror to and accepted by an offeree to do something in the future. A contract is thus executory rather than executed. And we'll probably have to come back to that. And then number 3, legal, the document containing such an agreement. Number 4, legal, a part of legal studies dealing with laws and jurisdiction related to contracts. And then number 5, informal, an order usually given to a hired assassin to kill someone. 6, bridge, the declarer's undertaking to win the number of tricks, bid with a stated suit as trump. Now we seem to be getting a little closer to antithesis, Lucifer, Satan, demonic forces perhaps. And then synonyms, part of legal studies, would be contract law. Right. And then adjective form, contract, one, obsolete, contracted, affiant, some of this I can't even say. AFFIANCED, betrothed. Interesting. Not abstract. And then number 2, obsolete, not abstract, concrete. Then we have the verb form, number 1, ambitransitive, to draw together, or so that's to contract. So let's not even bother with that. Although I will scan it to see if it gets us anywhere near oath. Yeah, I'm not seeing oath yet. So I don't know. How'd you get to oath from contract, Dick? I'm not seeing the path there, sir. I need you to show your math if you don't mind. Otherwise, I'm going to say, well, that's not an answer at all because that's not the question that I answered. Did I ask? So oath would be, well, and actually you did answer before I invoked the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob framework, and I forget which one of them was going to be perhaps offered up as a sacrifice, a sacrificial lamb, right, to a test of obedience. But Dick actually, perhaps anticipating this, went with oath, which would be a solemn pledge or promise that invokes a deity, a ruler, or another entity not necessarily present to attest the truth of a statement or sincerity of one's desire to fulfill a contract or promise. So now we're again back to the connotation as of Paul enslaved as authority, or Paul enslaved as deity, or Paul enslaved as ruler, shot caller. I'm a big baller, shot caller, 20-inch blades on the Impala. Holla, getting paid tonight. Woo! Number 2, a statement or promise which is strengthened by such a pledge. Which is strengthened or affirmed by such a pledge. And then number 3, a light, irreverent, or insulting appeal to a deity or other entity. Oh, interesting, Dick. An oath. Number 4, a curse. A curse word. Huh. So all of this talk here on this channel of to treat one's blessing as if it were a curse, assuming that the being is apprehended or possessed of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. On some level, well, not on some level, one with the most super intelligent power and force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency. Certainly that would represent a force that Paul enslaved could be cut off from. Right. This idea that we are all one at the highest level, well, I don't know. Is it then simply impossible? Is it impossible for the being to degenerate and to vibrate at such low levels as to be cut up? And I say God, so let me go back and correct my work here. Cut away from or separated from the most super intelligent power and force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. So could there possibly have been a process of degeneration and a slowing down of the energies, right? And in observing a being the physicality of a being within this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, who's vibrating on a level within illusion to, have amassed such a mighty girth physically, right? And then, the performance, and Benton here has done his own performance of expanding his own girth at times, right? And then, perhaps connections to the so-called seven deadly sins, gluttony, right? And simply observing and reporting, not condemning, right? Because again, with this being a wholly individual experience, Benton here has no dog in that hunt. See, for Benton will never be called in the context of the performance, right? In the context of the hallucination, perhaps the waking dream, surrealistic unreality, that it's even possible in the first place to break off a little chunk of a indivisible force and then send it to this delusory realm to perform as a human being, right? A human being to perform these things. See, do you see how context matters, people? It's context, 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 and pretty quickly, legalese. We're into the legalese, right? And the fine print. And so, in seeking obedience and in presenting oneself as authority, well, again, back to contract, Dick. See, outside of the context of an oath, because oath doesn't seem to imply the legalese so much, right? Oath seems to be more like, hey, the being has a desire, right? A so-called desire of the flesh, and now we're back to falsely identifying with this realm as if it were ever possibly as presented, and then in order for the being to receive, certain rewards, certain in a render unto Caesar, let the dead bury the dead way, right? Seeking to enjoy the pleasures of the flesh, the dead pleasures of the dead flesh, and the idea of signing one's, the contract with antithesis or Satan, right? Sign on the dotted line, as I suspect Saul of Tarsus signed on the dotted line. I suspect. And part of Saul of Tarsus's the legalese within the contract, right? Because the oath part, Dick, in choosing to use the word oath, it does seem to be an acknowledgement of here's the contract as presented, and at the crossroads when Robert Johnson is signing signing his soul over to the devil, so called, in order to have this great musical talent in this dead world, in these games of lies. Was Robert Johnson even literate? It's like, well, make your mark, make your mark here. And probably the Robert Johnson story, and whether or not he was literate, probably not. Probably not. The musician Robert Johnson, probably not literate. So the legalese and the contract would be of primary importance from the perspective of antithesis, who's, again, based on Benton's assertions of what this place is, it's antithesis seeking to pause the game and then have some version of a courtroom scene from the movie The Devil's Advocate to then say, as prosecutor, thesis or proposition has been that the supreme authority is this indivisible force, and my machine, Moloch's machine, not mine, but antithesis's machine, seeking through via industrial and post-industrial society, right, to say, well, this mocking idea of this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, to say, well, this computer simulation, this matrix, has been measuring the discrete output of every new illusory moment. Now it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone. And, a week or two's gone by already, and none of these little lights have shone. And in fact, the realm that makes an enemy of what I am, as long as Benton's here, and this actually upholds the philosophy of solipsism, because as long as Benton is here performing within time, space, location, place, within illusion and delusion, that could even exist when it can't, right? That can't even possibly exist outside of the context of what I am, right? But what from down here seems like the larger force. But I can't, what I am can't be individuated in the first place. See? So when the being comes unto, again, unlocking the achievement of true knowledge of self / self-realization, well, now the being can extrapolate and invert and deductive reason and do all and intuit and abstractly come to a knowledge of what's going on here, seemingly what seems to be going on here, right? So, and whatever demons may or may not be oppressing old Dick would certainly be experts in all of this legalese. See? So again, demons do your worst, and are these some of the best demons money can buy? Right? Are these some of the best demons money can buy? Dick, not Dick the human. Of course, that's not even a thing anyway. Remember, the Son of Man is dead, right? The meat suit is dead. Anything that traces its origins to this place is dead. Well, isn't this where humanity was created, in this place? Within delusion, right? This idea that Adam and Eve, the so-called fall of man and rebellion and cast out of the garden. And then is that not some acknowledgement of the notion of antithesis in seeking to make an enemy of what I am, convincing in the story of the Bible? And this would have already been within delusion. The idea of these individuated angels and an individuated God the Father and an individuated Christ and an individuated Holy Ghost. See, the royal we's already in delusion. So then the war in the heavenlies, according to the Bible, and again, not saying that this literally, or this is a story, a parabolic story perhaps, parabola, and let's wait for the sirens to stop. So Satan cast down into the earth with his armies of what were angels, and then let us make man in our image, right? Well, who the fuck is our? Is that supposed to be God, Son, Holy Ghost? Well, what is that? Or maybe that's antithesis and its armies seeking to, well, if every knee shall bow in the context of this spiritual war, let's go ahead and make sure that the scales tip in our favor via Moloch's machine, right? So was the garden in the story of the Bible, was that a testing place perhaps, or again, to bring it to the book of Job, the nature of assertion or proposition or thesis, if we look at the story of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, that force would lack the ability to conceptualize calamity or catastrophe or any possibility of defeat, any possibility of difficulty, right? Made to lie down in green pastures, right? And lie beside the still waters. A ding-dong dally and a cane break. Interesting. And then the idea of the child symbolically representing spiritual perfection, but also representing what? Helplessness. So Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, for whatever reason, entrusted with the wealth of the family, and then could that not be an acknowledgement of this, of symbolized by the helpless babe, the birthright of the helpless babe being supreme authority, the source of all life, and all possibility of meaning and substance whatsoever. In this realm, representing the lack of all of that. And then, so will every knee bow to the most super intelligent power and force of love and creation possible at the highest levels? Or will it bow to the lack of those characteristics? And remember, there's no middle ground. The lukewarm is spat out of the mouth. I never knew you, all of that. There's no playing the middle. That doesn't exist. It's one or the other at all times in each new moment, each new illusory moment. Now it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone. And Moloch's machine, and here's the computer simulation aspects, that's the machinery, just like a computer server has logs. So there's a record, right? There's a record of, in each new moment, the creative force of the being never lying dormant is bringing something new into existence, and that is a zero or a one, and represents thesis or antithesis. And remember, in order for unless one is willing to admit that there's a possibility of nothing, it seems like most folks and philosophers and academics seem to agree that there has to be something. And the moment there has to be something, we have thesis. And the moment we have thesis, we have antithesis. There has to be antithesis at the thesis. And if there has to be something, if there can't be nothing, there has to be something. And now, pretty soon we're on to yin and yang. So, whatever the garden would have represented, next phase is leave the garden, can't go back to the garden. At least not initially. And is that some version of to be taught to identify with not the circumstances that one was born into and what that would represent spiritually, and in fact to treat one's blessing as if it were a curse, right? Because if Adam knew how to confess, repent, seek forgiveness, and then be forgiven, could he not say to what he already is, couldn't he just be like, no, man, I'm not going anywhere, right? And did Adam and Eve consent to this experience by leaving the garden, right? Was not it already contained within Adam to say, hey, man, the assertion is that by eating this apple, we've fallen into folly, sin, and error. I'm here to tell you that what I am can't ever be marred. It can't ever experience defeat. It can't ever give into its lower nature and then that be the basis of an accusation, because there's always the context of confess, repent, seek forgiveness, and am forgiven like it never happened. That's always there, see? And that's not a matter of belief. That's what is, right? So was some of this the psychology of Adam and Eve accepting what they were told by what they may have believed to be, air quotes, God, but in fact was, because in the context especially of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, Adam, what would have been contained within Adam, again, we're already in delusion, not understanding his own nature. And then back to John 15:16, I will send the Comforter, which is the Holy Ghost, to teach you all things and bring unto your remembrance. Adam seems to have forgotten what he is or what he was. See, he seems to have forgotten. And then it's to accept. So was the sin Eve eating the apple and giving it to Adam, or was the sin to recognize an authority that's lower than the authority that Adam represented, and then to what? To curse his race. And then so now we get into the Christ story, and what I find most relevant about the Christ story in the Christian context, and again, all religion is demonic, but within the context of the teachings of the gospel of Christ in the Bible, it's this idea of the value of the sacrifice. It has to represent supreme value within delusion. Outside of delusion, it is supreme value. Outside of delusion, it is blessing. See? So within the delusion, the sacrifice must necessarily represent highest possible authority, highest possible value. So now we see Dick defending the ostensible behaviors of one Paul enslaved, who seems to be undergoing a process of asserting his own authority, to where individuals that will sign themselves onto that authority, if they themselves are possessed of the Nancy Pelosi MS-13 spark of divinity, they would be bowing down to an entity lower than themselves and cursing their own blessing. See, and this is the game. So number one, what you gonna tell old Benton? Number two, what's there really for old Benton to do here except continue to um, the cup to continue to run over, right? And the continuous renewing of the spirit and the resurrection of the risen Christ within Benton, within delusion. See, oh, he's calling himself God or Christ again. That's what you say. And if that ain't the Comforter teaching all things and bringing unto remembrance, I don't know what is. They ain't ready for this one, y'all. They ain't ready for this one. 5 in the house and 8 likes. They can't hear it. See, them demons, the best demons that money can buy, they know all this. See? And now we get into psychopathy via what? Jealousy and envy. We get into psychopathy via jealousy and envy, where I did a live stream response to, in a thought experiment, Brother Austin. And I guess I can't call him brother. I really can't. It's sad, but I can't call him brother. He's going to have to evict them demons. He's going to have to shake them demons off. You're going to have to get up under that demonic oppression, sir. Can't nobody be infested with demons and be my kin. See? And when I was talking to my mother last night, boy, them demons was panicking. And I know what a demon panic sounds like and looks like. Them demons went to panicking. They said, oh man, we're going to have to, is he going to make us come up out of here? No, I can't make them come up out of here because they got to confess and repent. Or she has to. Right? Or at least, make some notion of what? Not worshiping me, not worshiping Jesus necessarily, but to at least what? Perhaps acknowledge the authority, the supreme authority that would be contained within her. Right? But then I do want to, let me go back and cover this leaving of the garden, passing into this world and, cursed with the childbearing and then, in the story of the Bible, there's already other humans here, right? And again, let us make man in our image. Let's make him wicked. Let's take this symbolic representation of what was made to lie in green pastures and down by the still waters and ding dong dally in a canebrake, which is also an acknowledgement of what? The idea of sexual reproduction. Maybe that was a common place for a fella to take his a lady for a liaison, right? Made to lie down in green pastures, because if you look at the mockery of the Bible itself, I'm starting to see Psalm 23 in a different light, which is there are certain mockeries. At some point I'm not going to be able to continue reciting that until I rewrite it, and I rewrote it in part recently. But I did that, in sort of a freestyle form, if that makes sense. And so to accept the Bible as authority, but if what I am is the value and is the substance and is symbolically represents authority, is it then possible to replace that within delusion with a written book that men wrote? See? Because remember, Chalk Bozo Offline, Chalk Body Outline, on his recent stream, him and EBT, if people know who this is, and if not, it's okay, but these are YouTube content creators, among other things. And they, wanted to give some credit to Charlie Kirk and said, well, at least he would mention Jesus. Yeah, so will Kanye, so fucking what? But then, don't trust anybody who won't mention Jesus, said Chalk Bozo Offline, and then added, and also don't trust anybody who won't go along with Paul from the Bible. Don't trust anybody who doesn't recognize the authority of the church, is what that means. Because Paul's so-called authority to write these letters to these churches and have them obeyed authoritatively was tied up in, he had to seek out Ananias to sign off on this. So we're already into so-called earthly authority. We're already into external earthly authority, which can never represent authority and can never represent value, meaning, or substance. The church cannot represent meaning, value, or substance or authority. It's not possible. Only when two or more are gathered in the name of what I am. And that ain't the church, right? And that could happen anywhere within delusion. See? So keep going to those churches and their 501(c) tax exemption and put your butt in the seat, and they're happily going to tell you to make sure and pay your taxes because of the authority of the church and the writings of Saul of Tarsus, I mean the Apostle Paul. And then to connect that on the back end to render unto Caesar and to pretend like the demons don't understand what Christ would have meant by that. Because what Christ meant by that is let the dead bury the dead. It all belongs to this realm of death anyway. What's the difference? If they want it, let them have it. By the way, all they that hate me, the most super intelligent force and power of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit, love death, meaning love this world. And they trace their origins to this world. And anything that can trace its origins to this world is dead. The Son of Man is dead. And that was the entirety of how Christ defeated antithesis. And in fact, antithesis defeats itself. See, antithesis defeats itself, but Christ would have understood that the sacrifice has to be 100%, and 99% ain't good enough. Because if what I am is representative of 100% authority and 100% blessing, a 99% power level, a level 99 sacrifice won't do. See, has to be 100. It has to represent a 0 or a 1. So in this context, only a 100% power level sacrifice represents the 1. If it's even a 99% power level, it represents curse. See, now we're back to the binary of to treat one's blessing, which is representative of 100% authority and value, and that the aka the birthright of the being in the context of delusion, passing through the mother's womb into this Moloch's machine, sacrificed to Moloch's machine, and in a state of helplessness, as my mother noted, when the demons inside of her were panicking, they very quickly pointed out, well, this has to be a loving realm because the baby, the spiritually perfected baby, innocent child is helpless. And so that has to be love to raise that child up from a state of helplessness. Oh, does it? What's loving about taking a representation of the highest possible value and then letting Moloch have its way with it? See? And then some would probably accuse the Most High and say, well, that's what the Most High has seemingly done. I say, not so fast, my friends. Because that force, just look at the story of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. That force doesn't know anything about being cut off from its birthright. In the story of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, when the family says, here's our coin purse, because remember, man cannot serve the Most High and serve mammon or money. And so Jack and the Beanstalk, here's the coin purse. The cow has to be replaced. The milk's no good. We need you to go to town, sir. We live on the outskirts of town. We need you to go to town and come back with a cow. And then just constantly warned along the way, look out for what calamities may befall you. And Jack's like, he can't relate to calamity. He can't conceptualize calamity, see. So really, there's no defense for you. It's just not really possible within delusion to say, well, yeah, but baby is born helpless. And I told my mom, I said, you're making my point, right? It's these interventions, the treating blessing as if it were a curse, and to sacrifice it to Moloch is to put it through the public, and I didn't tell her this, but it's to put it through the public indoctrination center, and then to teach it how to be a good, proper corporate unit so that it can make rich people richer every new moment into perpetuity, thus serving money and doing it as a slave at the level of, because the system, it limits the resources of the worker. And now we're back to Orwell's Animal Farm and the horse doing all of the work, while the rich pigs, fatten themselves up on the spoils. And now this Moloch's machine says, eat the rich. You can't eat the rich. They'd have to be starved out first, and the only way to starve them out is if the blinders were removed from the horse and he could see what the fuck was going on, and he's like, whoa, I'm not going to plow the field today. Are you crazy? Meanwhile, what did he do? He plowed the field every day like a good obedient slave under the authority of this realm, and was sent off to the glue factory, because when he couldn't plow the field anymore, he still served a purpose. Send him off to the glue factory. And again, that may not be the actual story of Animal Farm. It's close enough, right? But remind me again, Yurt, Austin, remind me again why I need to read these stories so that I'm an expert in every single written part of them, or is a demonstration of the understanding of the material, is that good enough? Material. The smartest person that sounds the dumbest. See? Perhaps my own mockery. Hey, right back at you, Padna. Aligning the demonic forces aligned with antithesis in this realm, and then the weapons of mockery and ridicule utilized by certain individuals against Benton and what Benton symbolically represents. Not the personality or the performer. The birthright. And then back to what? The resurrection of the risen Christ within me. Spiritual perfection. And this place can't put a mark or a stain on that which I am. Same with Adam. See? Adam would have had access to the same mechanism. See, he'd forgotten himself or never knew it. Again, what sort of helpless state was Adam in to not have the comprehension of this? And then within delusion, it's also recognizing that the system withholds knowledge, withholds support, withholds love, but claims to be providing love and a paradise, right? And is this not in some way how America is portrayed? Is not America portrayed as the land of opportunity, and go out here and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and go out here and seek material wealth, and this is the place to do it? Isn't this the place where that happens, right? But certainly what it does not perform in service of the individual. It does not perform in the service of the working class or the underclass or the proletariat. And it will not, for it cannot. Because it cannot bow its knee to its master, Satan or antithesis. See? It doesn't have it can't acknowledge the accomplishments of Benton within the context of the performance. Of what? Of acknowledging and treating the birthright as exactly at the level of blessing that it is and what it represents symbolically within delusion. See? Again, true knowledge of self/self-realization. And to do that, come what may. Right? So the sign of the cross, and I brought up Louis Farrakhan recently, and I never fully made the point why I brought up Louis Farrakhan. He preached on, this idea that Jesus was crucified at the cross, but then what he was saying is Jesus was in town hanging out, perhaps, and here came the Roman soldiers, and we're like, hey, buddy, if you keep on, we're going to put you to death. And then the sign of the cross would have been Jesus standing up and extending his arms out and then just allowing them to stab him to death. It's just basically saying, well, I'm not going to stop, so this is as good a time as any. Come on with it. And would that not represent 100% power level sacrifice? And would that not be consistent with the behavior of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk? And would that not be consistent with at least Job chapter 1, right? In the context of, again, within delusion, this idea of Father God and wanting to be helpful and saying, hey, the sons of God came to present themselves unto the Lord. These would have been fallen angels, probably, right? Or maybe a mixture of angels and demons, right? Or at least fallen angels, but with bodies. The angel implies body, at least implies it. And then Satan also came in their midst, which implied that they didn't know that Satan or antithesis came in their midst, and also an acknowledgement that antithesis is always present. See? And so God, in the story, right, surveys the sons of God that had came to present themselves almost in a military sense. And he, looking the group over, says, hey, what's happening, Satan? Or antithesis? Or the lack of everything that Benton, in the context of this performance within delusion, represents symbolically, having unlocked the achievement of true knowledge of self, and says, what are you doing? And antithesis says, well, you know my nature, right? But he doesn't know your nature, sir. So we're already into subterfuge and manipulation, right? Roaming to and fro, seeking whom I may devour. And then hearing this, Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk wants to be helpful and says, well, we got Job over here. Have you thought about him? Maybe he's devourable. And then God, or Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, being 100% properly identified within himself, knows, well, if Job is what I am, then you can't devour him anyway. So might as well give it a shot. And is that a version of what Paul enslaved in being defended by Dick, or Freedom Grower, down there on a stream that I watched yesterday? Is that the idea of a test? See? And then, of course, Job, in the story, would have proven himself. But was it even necessary for him to prove himself? Because remember, what he was or what he is will never know defeat anyway. Because, see, it disproves itself. So the test that Dick was saying, well, have you ever thought about this could be a test? That's an inversion, Dick. The truth is the inverse of what you're asserting. The truth is that what I am can't fail the test. And then, can that even properly be said to represent a test? And is that maybe just what I am showing itself for what it is? See? And the inverse notion, on behalf of antithesis, presenting it as, a tightrope walk where you better watch out. If the being doesn't remain properly balanced at all times, then the being is going to, just one little slip of putting the balance in the wrong area, and the being's going to fall into calamity, right? And that's how Jack was treated. He was treated like, hey man, that's a tightrope. They're going to try to, if you tell anybody you got these resources, they're going to try to rob you, right? They're going to come try to steal your birthright. Or maybe you're dumb enough to, in the context of the Bible, maybe he's dumb enough to trade it for a bowl of stew. Another mockery, more ridicule. See, more mockery and ridicule to further subject the being to fear, guilt, and shame. Oh, wait a minute. Now that he's been ridiculed and mocked, and maybe the being will then go back to acting the way that this realm wants the being to behave in the context of the vacuous, delusory adversarial realm of business transactions. Oh, well, now the being is walking to then uphold, industrial society, and to, treat blessing as if it were a curse. So here's just enough Federal Reserve notes to continue this death, not this life, but this death. And then if the being wants to go above and beyond and really show out and really climb the corporate ladder, will now maybe be able to drive around in a luxury car and live in a mansion and, have some access to some concubines, right? And all of this. So what God was King Solomon? What God was he serving? Let's see. But hey, please, Chalk Bozo offline, make sure to enter into the doors of the church uh, and be a good little boy and teach your good little boys to be good little boys by doing what they're told and obeying Saul of Tarsus, a Roman secular Jew. Not that the Jew part matters to me, but go ahead and do that. Prove your obedience. And now we're back to what? My famous grandfather telling me, hey, Benton, you're a good boy when you're asleep. Meaning when you're not conscious, when you're just going along to get along within this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, which is an acknowledgement of what? The low level of the being within themselves who refuses to internally bootstrap and bring up the level of their awareness within themselves, mind, body, and spirit. So yeah, you're a good boy when you treat your blessing like a curse. And what did the famous Benton do with his curse? What did he have to, what level of evil would he have had to serve to be able to, on November or 11, on this 22nd day of November, there you got an 11 and a 22 of 1945, to suit up in his uniform like a good little boy and go get 10 catches for 303 yards, right? As a receiver for the Rams. Is that a mockery and a ridicule of the concept of a sacrificial lamb, perhaps? And then his college number 33, right? In the encoding of these sports statistics. My grandfather told me to his face that he should have had an even higher record, but that he blamed it on a referee error. But he said he caught a football, fell down, and then got up and kept running, and nobody touched him. And in college, that would have been, he's down where he fell. In the pros, he gets to stand up and keep running if nobody touches him. But seemingly the powers that be wanted that record at 303, and as we know, the zero don't count, so there's your 33. And then we got the 1122. See? And then you got the 1945, which you got you got a 99 right there. They said, what do you mean? Numerology, you add everything together. Not necessarily. You're going to tell me I can't add the 5 and the 4 and get a 9 and put that with the other 9, and you telling me I can't multiply by 1 and come out with 99? Of course I can. So I got an 11, a 22, and a 99. And I got 10 catches for 303 yards, a 33. I can't multiply, I can't get rid of the zeros and multiply the 33 by 1 and now the 33 stands? What do you mean? Why would the being limit itself to just one form of mathematics? Does that make any sense? When we're talking symbols, you're talking about numbers as symbols, right? Why would I accept, the delusion told me I can only use numerology in a specific way? Fuck you. Because that's to treat blessing as if it were a curse. That's to recognize an authority lower than what is represented symbolically by what I am. See? Do you see the games? A never-ending series of offers in the now. A never-ending series of offers in the now. As Dick, seemingly, whether he knows it or not, Freedom Grower, seemingly acknowledged by changing my framework of contract to his framework of oath. Again, to sort of rub one's nose in what's happening here spiritually. Say, oh, you think you're doing something out here, Benton. Well, let me remind you of a few things, right? Oh, okay, well, what does the quickening spirit do? vibrates a little quicker, moves beyond. Simple, elementary, my dear Watson. And then now we're to the Eastern notion of that what seems like an enemy, to have gratitude for one's enemies, because that's an opportunity to, show and prove and perhaps advance. Well, at this point, the only advancement left is to finally unlock the achievement. So after the unlocking the achievement of true knowledge of self, what's next? To prove within delusion to always properly identify and to never fall into sin through temporarily identifying with this strong delusory realm and illusory realm as if it was actually real and substantive and had any possibility of containing meaning or authority. This realm lacks the ability to express authority. This realm lacks the ability to express meaning. And it's the only way this realm understands what I am is through the lack of what I am. All they that hate me love death, or this place, or everything that I am not. How about you? And if that ain't some of the most powerful preaching ever heard in this realm, I don't know what is. Oh, there he goes, getting arrogant and prideful. Well, you think I don't feel my sensitive internal space saying, hey, wait a minute, man. Out of the last 10, now it's here, now it's gone, you seem to have properly identified 9 out of 10, and that ain't good enough, buddy. So the sin in that is now we're ringing steel. Now we're taking aim and pulling a trigger in each new moment. And Benton just went ding, 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 and he missed the last shot. And his internal space let him know, wait a minute, buddy, you missed that last one. And 9 out of 10 ain't good enough. It's got to be 10 out of 10 into perpetuity, sir, within delusion. Because what you are, sir, Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, he rang that steel 100% of the time. The Lord Christ Jesus rang that steel 10 out of 10 into perpetuity, buddy. But remember, the church says we had Saul of Tarsus, Apostle Paul, and then claimed ordination and anointment. And he said, well, hey, no matter how pure my intention, to paraphrase Saul, he said, well, no matter how pure my intention, I end up serving evil and wickedness anyway, so what's the motherfucking difference? The difference is, sir, that after letting this system of things run a metaphorical train on me, what I am will still rise above that, because what I am will never know defeat, certainly not at the hands of this bullshit ass realm. So yeah, it's an acknowledgement of, hey, Benton, maybe you just did ring that steel 9 out of 10 times. So it's time to confess. I confess my sin in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus of temporarily, improperly identifying with the strong realm of delusion and illusion by momentarily failing to properly identify within myself based on what I know myself to be. I repent by stating my true intention to no longer engage in such behavior, and via the resurrection of the risen Christ within me, that assists me in bringing myself to full repentance within the flesh, within the dead flesh, whereby that's the only possibility of falling into sin and folly and error, is to identify with the so-called sins of the flesh, and then to transcend such, again, through the resurrection of the risen Christ within me, which is what? The acknowledgement of the perfect sacrifice of Christ, that which I am. And to say, now to seek to be forgiven, and then immediately to be forgiven like it never happened. Now we're back to 100% power level. Boy, howdy, them demons don't like that one. Woo-wee! Demons in a panic. We got the best demons money can buy out here. Got them panicking, just like the ones in my mama panicked yesterday on the phone call. They went to panicking. They said it's not the time yet. Just like when Just went like when the Lord came upon the mentally ill man that they said was, couldn't nobody even approach him. He was so fearsome. And the Lord here come the Lord. Well, actually now I'm mixing two stories. See, not being a Bible expert. But let's talk about when Christ came along in the Bible and the guy was afflicted and demonically oppressed. And the demons recognized him as the Lord. They saw the perfect righteousness within. Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk on some level. And they got fearful and they said, hey, what are you doing here? It ain't the time yet. Meaning he might cast us out. And they immediately started saying, if you're going to cast us out, let's go into the swine. Otherwise, we gotta walk in the dry place, buddy. We ain't trying to do all that. Could you show us mercy? They appealed to what they knew of his nature, see? And then Christ would not have had a spirit of punishment, but perhaps could have had a spirit of what? Righteous anger at seeing the condition of the man under demonic oppression. And this is acknowledged with what? Driving the money changers out of the temple. So certainly Christ would have had the capability to express righteous anger and to just say, no, man, I choose how to cast y'all out, and I'm not going to let y'all go into the swine. And in a vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, what would be symbolized by them wanting to go into the swine and then going into the swine? Well, now we have tie-ins to George Orwell's Animal Farm. The swine representing what? The money or the administrators of this system of things. And then the calamity involved in serving the wrong of the two gods, serving money instead of the Most High, right? Would the demons have the option of falling on their faces and worshiping the Lord? Of course not. Because they've already cut themselves off from the Most High. And they're so cut off, they can't get back to it, see? They can't never get back to that. And that's why they don't like Psalm 23, because they can't reside in the house of the Lord forever. Now, if that was possible for them at one time, their own behaviors have cut them off from that. But the Christianity wants to bastardize that and say, well, if you don't perform 100% of the time, you're cut off. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's the 0% level where the being can't serve what's good and righteous, where the being can only pretend to serve what's good and righteous just for what's in it for them, see? It's the 0% power level to lack the ability to serve righteousness, because to be of this world would be to lack the ability to serve that which I am, and to say, that's the enemy. So if this realm makes an enemy of what I am, how can that thing serve me? It can't serve what I am. It can't, if every knee shall bow, how is it going to keep its position in Satan's kingdom if it's bowing its knee to what I am? Now, to do a better service of antithesis, maybe it will try to use tomfoolery and trickery and manipulation to plausibly, seemingly serve the Most High. And that's where we get to church, where some of them folks are in the church praising the Lord, but they're praising antithesis and they're praising Satan. Go watch you some Kenneth Copeland, Demons in a Tube. Meanwhile, the demons were in a tube, and the tube is Kenneth Copeland, while he's got off the charts levels of duper's delight on his face. And they called him out. They called him out on a flying around a private plane, and he got the gleeful look of duper's delight, and he called a commercial flight Demons in a Tube. Meanwhile, he's laughing and gleeful because he's acknowledging that he's the tube containing the demons, and they are legion, boy. So in the story of the Bible, Christ was merciful and cast them into the swine, which symbolically represented that now they get to go off and serve money and continue to enjoy themselves by what? By gathering by render unto Caesar, let the dead bury the dead. Now they get to go serve the systems of money, and they get to enjoy themselves. And the enjoyment of themselves is akin to drowning themselves in the sea. The sea of what? Of this world. The sea of business, the delusory adversarial, the vacuous delusory adversarial realm of business transactions. But the man who saw the demons cast out, he at least still has the potential for redemption, meaning that he still has the capacity to properly identify with himself, and thus can never, his essence can never degenerate to the level of being trapped here unless he goes back to his old ways, for it was his old ways that allowed the demons to enter in the first place. See? And this is the spiritual war. And if you think as a listener that this is not what is happening with you, you are crazy. This is absolutely happening with you. Of course it is. And a Christian forgets that what Jesus did in the Bible was he traveled around preaching and teaching. He traveled around healing. They have no problem with those two. They won't even tell you if you quiz them, hey, what did Jesus do in the Bible? They'll tell you, they'll answer anything but cast out demons. Because now they have to acknowledge that it's possible that they themselves may be infested with demons and under demonic oppression. I'm here to tell you, everybody who ain't received deliverance from wicked spirits, unclean spirits, and demonic spirits in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus, and has been sacrificed to Moloch within this place, is under demonic oppression and is infested with demons. Not because I say so, because that's the state of fallen humanity from so-called day one when Adam and Eve left the garden. You think they didn't leave the garden infested with demons? Are you crazy? And I know that's powerful, correct preaching, because my body's vibrating. And I got the natural high. Every reward center in my body is firing. You want to talk about dopamine? Shit. Better get you some of that serotonin, Jack. Better get you some of that DMT. Yeah, the body makes DMT. It ain't about tripping on DMT crystals. Can you perform and have your body release DMT in your system? Guess who has DMT released into their system? Do y'all know who has DMT released into their system? By their system? Schizophrenics. But see, they're at such a low level, and they're under such high levels of demonic oppression. We see what they do. See, the vessel is not in a proper position. They haven't prepared the way. They haven't tilled the soil. This is the parable of the sower and the reaper. Sower and the reaper, same thing. It's not to till the soil outside by walking around telling everybody what to do. It's to first till the soil of the internal space and then plant the seed of the birthright to make sure to plant the seeds. What is the seed? The seed is the creative force in the context of delusion. The creative force never lying dormant. A seed is planted in every new moment. It's to make sure that there's fertile tilled soil within the individual in each new moment. Now it's here, now it's gone. Plant the seed, plant the seed, plant the seed, plant the seed. And the only way to make the tree good is to make sure that what's symbolically represented in each new moment, and I understand I'm mixing my metaphors, and that's fine. This is the limitations of the being in some way. Right? And this is the fruit. See? And why can't I mix metaphors? Because the yurt Pharisee, representing the Pharisee, he'll happily show up and mock and ridicule and say, look at this bozo. He's mixing his metaphors. Can you believe anybody would even listen to this? You listen to it. You listen to it, yurt. What you gonna tell me? Nothing constructive whatsoever. And that doesn't reflect on me. And so back to jealousy and envy and psychopathy, because just to maybe build a bridge, because that's what my spirit is. My spirit wants to build a bridge to humanity. See? So in attempting to, within a thought experiment, build a bridge to a content creator of many names as if he's some kind of Wu-Tang rapper, in his multiplicity of names, is it not a truth, or is it in a yurt with books? Is it in a thought experiment? Is it Brother Austin? Is it Austin? What is it? It seems to be confused about what it is. Anything but a singularity, apparently. Right. anything but a singularity. And in order to build that bridge, I went along with his notion of, and he didn't say psychopath, he said like a psychopath in describing Benton's behavior, but he would understand that the peanut gallery will immediately remove the context of like a psychopath, and all they hear is psychopath. Well, what I know of psychopathy, the primary motivator for psychopathy is envy and jealousy. Guess who does not perform enviously and jealously? That's your boy Talcott, Yurt. See, this is what I mean when I talk about the so-called truth community has served. They've dug these patterns so deep in their interactions with Jack Talcott that they come over here and treat me like I'm afflicted with the problems of jealousy and envy. Are you crazy? How am I going to be accused of all of this level of performance? And I'm going to be jealous and envious. Of what? What would I be jealous and envious of? Because remember, the true knowledge of self slash self-realization says, hey, buddy, you are the blessing, right? What you represent supreme authority and highest possible meaning and highest possible value. And in fact, within this delusion and illusion, the only possibility of substance and meaning and authority whatsoever is contained within me, worshiper and worshipee in the same space within delusion, time, space, location, place. And this realm and religion, first and foremost, sets about to cut the being off from ever discovering that for his or herself. Right. Good luck. Good luck prospering those weapons. Fools. Fools. So yes, Yurt, I flipped you on your head yet again. Best demons money can buy. Do your worst. And the first time around, maybe it takes a month to flip them demons on their head. Then the next time around, a week. Then the next time around, a day. Then it's an hour. Then I just stand there and look at them and sort of yawn and say, really? Is this what we're doing? Shrug my shoulders. Like the Zen Buddhist, the abbot or whoever at the monastery, whatever they call it over there, I forget what they call that in Tibet, whatever that is, the temple, I don't fucking know. Does it matter? And then the mockery of 7 years in Tibet, whereby in order to even build the Buddhist monastery, or I guess it's a monastery, to even build the monastery, you got Brad Pitt out there, pretty boy Brad Pitt, and they're trying to do something, but it's taken longer than necessary because the monks are out there making sure not a single ant gets trod upon, because that could be the reincarnated ancestors. More mockery, more ridicule. The ants are dead, sir. The ants are dead. Hate to break it to you. They're as dead as the dirt. Let the dead bury the dead, monks. But so in the Zen Buddhist story of early one morning, because remember the highest ranking in the monastery, they get up early. See, really, who gets up the earliest by how early do they wake up and meditate. See, right, and how late do they sleep in? So early in the morning, already done with his meditations, the head monk or abbot or whatever in charge, well, he's probably the oldest as well. He's walking down the hallway, and now who knows what the initiate was up to, but one of the young initiates thought he'd play a prank and sprang out of nowhere and thought he was gonna go boo and shock and stun the Zen Buddhist, expert level Zen Buddhist, who, nonplussed and non-reacting, continued walking down the hall, and then paused, grasped his chest, leaned against the wall, and went, "Ah!" and then kept it moving. What you think about that, yurt? Best demons money can buy. And they show what they are when they start panicking and say, hey, if we're going to be cast out, can we at least go, could you at least position us within time, space, location, place where we'll have the best chance of inhabiting a being so that we can continue to enjoy the pleasures of the flesh via the business? We're in a realm where everything's a business. Can we, pretty please with sugar on top, be put into something that's involved in some level of business? And the swine certainly had value to some pig farmer somewhere who would have presumably at one level of the parable seen some of their wealth disappear overnight, which is probably in some way representing the monetary system itself, because that's what it is in 2025. When the people of Iceland said, well, actually, we don't owe that money, and y'all want us to bail the banks out to the tune of 40 bill or whatever, 40 billion. And they say, well, we don't owe that money. We don't know what you're talking about. And didn't, you know what happened to the 40 billion? It just disappeared. Kind of like the swine that seemingly represented value just running down into the sea and drowning. At least the swine, though. Of course, wouldn't the Jews say you can't eat the swine anyway? So I don't know. Did they represent value? It's a good question. There's a thought experiment for you. You tell me, Jack. Thank you, Ghostface Chris. All ears, baby. Hey, and I don't need any credit, Chris. And in fact, as we know, Christos, if you were to go around to these panels and see, this is where I praise the wisdom of the youth. And I'm not, this is almost like inverse gaslighting, but I've observed Christos enough. He might know intuitively, or I don't want to speak for him. So my own projections, and I'll project onto his talents. This is what people used to do to me. They'd see my talent, right, in the idea of a grasshopper. And I'm not calling him a grasshopper. I'm saying that my own grandfather used to say to me, you're a grasshopper, dominical, ding dong dally, and a cane break. And he meant dominical, which was a reference to the Lord Christ Jesus in one context, but certainly contains other contexts. But Christos probably understands on some level that to go around singing old Benton's praises would actually have the opposite of the intended effect, and certainly wouldn't do me any favors. So just him being all ears that's the highest level compliment I need. What's it matter? It's a waking dream, surrealistic unreality. It's a waking dream, surrealistic unreality. What's the difference? It's a waking dream, surrealistic unreality. What's the difference? And then they say, well, that's our point, sir. That's the point we're making. That's the point we're making. And I thought it was supposed to rain today. I got to rewind the stream. I got to hear if I can hear it. Hang on, I got to see if I can hear this. Give me a moment. Did that come through on the speakers? Christos probably understands on some level. Hang on. But to go around singing old Benton's. Why ain't my Bluetooth working? Praises would actually have the Oh yeah, here we go. Of the intended effect, and certainly wouldn't do me any favors. So just him being all ears that's the highest level compliment I need. What's it matter? It's a waking dream, surrealistic unreality.
Huh.
It's
Yeah,
a waking.
Yeah, you can't hear it.
This is where I praise the wisdom of the youth. And I'm not. This is almost like inverse gaslighting. But I've observed Christos enough. He might know intuitively, or I don't want to speak for him. So my own projections, and I'll project onto his talents. This is what people used to do to me. They'd see my talent, right, in the idea of a grasshopper, and I'm not calling him a grasshopper. I'm saying that my own grandfather used to say to me, "You're a grasshopper, Dominical, ding dong dally, and a cane break." Wow, that's a trip. The whole thing just stops there. Yeah. That's what my famous grandfather, used to tell me when I was quite young. Now the technology is just refusing to operate. I'm going to try this again, though. Oh, I see what happened. My earbuds connected. All right, hang on. I got to see this. I got to see if this is audio is on here or not. And I was promised rain, man. I was ready to take the day off. All right, give me a second. Thank you for your patience. Oh, I see what happened. And I'm not calling him a grasshopper. I'm saying that my own grandfather used to say to me, "You're a grasshopper, Dominical, ding dong dally, and a cane break." Wow, that's a trip. Yeah, I might be hallucinating. It's certainly possible. Might have hallucinated it. Certainly within the realm of possibility. Oh well. Thank you all for humoring me. Yeah, were you here earlier, Christos, when I went through a whole breakdown of that? Actually, I talked to my mom and asked her, because I couldn't remember all of it. And I don't think my mom remembered it right either. I think I'm going to have to ask my dad, but that's close, but I don't think that's the whole thing. But it's Dominical, which is actually Dominical, because the way we talk where I'm from. And I'll go back through it unless you heard it already. If you already heard me, because I just now started. Okay, hang on. You're gonna. Well, I can't. I don't know how you're gonna. Anyway, give me a second. If you go to my post tab, and you don't have to do that now, but for reference, under my post tab, I played this song. There's a YouTube video for this song called "Down in the Cane Breaks," I think it is, or "Down Among the Cane Breaks." And in the comments, I typed, "My famous grandfather said to me as a child, 'You're a grasshopper, Dominical, ding dong dally, and a cane break.'" And so then I defined all the terms. Grasshopper, noun, 3, figuratively, a young student in the initial stages of training who has been chosen on account of their obvious talent. And then Dominical is noun 1, a person who keeps Sunday as a day of rest, but does not regard it as representing the Sabbath of the Old Testament of the Bible. And then the number three definition, obsolete, is number one, the Lord's Day or Sunday. Number two, short for Dominical letter. And then Dominical letter means, wait a minute, never, sorry, I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, Dominical letter is any of the first seven letters of the alphabet used in religious calendars to mark the Sundays throughout the year and determine dates such as Easter Sunday. Then you also have number three definition of Dominical is of or pertaining to the ancient system of Dominical letters used for determining Sundays, particularly Easter Sunday, in any given year. And then Ding Dong Dally, and I wrote Ding Ding Dally, but it's supposed to be Ding Dong Dally, an idiom that means to waste time or dawdle. And then cane brake is a thicket of giant cane, a type of bamboo-like grass that was once common in the wetlands of the southeastern United States. And I'm from a wetland area of the southeastern United States, also known as a swamp. And then he would also tell me, you're a good boy when you're asleep, which seemed to be perhaps some recognition of not being consciously aware enough to see this place for what it is, and that being good. And then I sort of got lost in descriptions of the numerology around his football career and talking about, you know, but then he never really got rich from serving the system, but he was successful enough in business to at least be able to, send his kids to college, his children. And, I have an uncle that was a lawyer and became a judge and still a judge. And my dad, went to college. Although it's like, you work your way through college type shit. But, my dad was able to work in the family business. And my grandfather ended up having a bulk plant where, gasoline, right? Diesel and gasoline, trucks to take gasoline and diesel to the local filling stations that they called them back then. So then my dad's oldest brothers, who were twins, who, if they weren't mentally ill, and that's not a pejorative, if they didn't have problems in their heads, they would have absolutely 100% played in the NBA without question. Both of them would have. And they actually did not graduate from college, interestingly, and I didn't either. But then I'm pretty sure the next Benton boy that came along did. He's the judge. Well, he did, of course. And then I'm almost sure my aunt, my dad's only sister, I'm pretty sure she graduated college. And then my father graduated, and so at least one of the two twins, raised his family managing one of my grandfather's filling stations, because they were like 18 years older than my dad, so they would have been born in, what would that have been, like 38? Yeah, near the beginning of my grandfather's NFL career, would have been 38, would have been his first season. And then my dad was born in 55, so yeah, 37 probably. So right about the time my grandfather was leaving college, and my grandmother, Lena Mills, and a lot of these people have passed. And so then my father, again, needing something to do and not making his own career, my famous grandfather bought a piece of property and developed a convenience store that was named Big Jim and referred to as Big Jim's. So I grew up as my father owning and operating this. He owned and operated the business, but my grandfather retained the land and the building itself. And that's what my father did. And my father was able to, save up what would have been viewed as a fortune, but it was in fact, so I grew up in a family where we temporarily experienced relative affluence in one of the most impoverished areas of the entire country. And in fact, by the mid 1990s, and I was a daily reader of the newspaper, I opened, and I read both newspapers. We had two state newspapers back then. And, I looked at the two different state articles about, in the Arkansas section of the paper about how Jefferson County, Arkansas was acknowledged as the most economically depressed county in the country. So my father, having a high income relative to the area, and people certainly would have thought of us as wealthy and rich, but that was not the case, and certainly I did not have access to those resources. But always had clothes on my back and food on the table, so had what I needed, if not what I wanted. Yeah, interesting, very interesting in that context. Might need to listen to that song again. Down in among the cane brakes. I definitely had a strong visceral reaction the first time I heard that song, and it's not like I say, this is not directly related to that, but I got to that song pretty quick, so and it's from 1860, so probably my grandfather would have heard it, or at least heard people singing it, and he was born in I think like 1908. I don't remember exactly. Jim Benton football, and let's not forget that I'm in Los Angeles, and he was an All-Pro wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams and scored 4 touchdowns in the LA Coliseum, which is still here, and I believe that's where they still play college football there, and I think that's where they have the Rose Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure. Yeah, he was born in 1916. So I don't know. That song might have still been around. I don't know what the state of the recording industry was. This is a Stephen Foster, apparently. It's a Stephen Foster song. Down in the cane brakes. So yeah, why not play it again? Might as well. Hang on, I gotta connect the speaker here.
Once I could laugh and play when in life's early day, and I was far away down among the cane brakes, down among the cane brakes on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. Yes, I was free from care, all was bright summer there. Dark days to me were fair, down among the cane brakes, down among the cane brakes on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. There lived my mother dear, gone from this world I fear. There rang our voices clear, down among the cane brakes, down among the cane brakes on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. There lived a lovely one who, like the rest, has gone. She might have been my own, down among the cane brakes, down among the cane brakes on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more. Years have glided by, since then I breathed each sigh. May I return to die, down among the canebrakes, down among the canebrakes, on the Mississippi shore. Oh, those happy days are o'er. Oh, those happy days will come back no more.
And my hometown about 100 miles west of the Mississippi shore, if anybody's curious about that. A little bit farther to where my grandfather's from, but about 150 miles maybe. I don't know. It kind of depends on where does the Mississippi go, since it's not in a straight line. I don't know. Maybe kind of hard to see on the map. Fordyce. As the crow flies, not that far. Not that far. Of course, Fordyce is southwest of Kingsland, which is where Johnny Cash is from. And his parents were cotton picking sharecroppers, Johnny Cash's. So, in a lot of ways, old Benton here is from a completely different world than most of you. And that's okay, but it's a fucking trip, man. It's a fucking trip. Yeah, there you go, Big Jim's. That's right. And my grandfather was Big Jim Benton, because 6'3", 200 pounds. I was a big dude back in the day. My dad went 6'2", 260, and all of his brothers are bigger than him. But yeah. Hell, I want to say my aunt's about my height, maybe a little taller. I got a baby sister taller than me. But whatever. Who cares? But yeah, I think I hallucinated. That's not, I don't know that that's bad, but I just hallucinated on stream. Not a good sign. Or maybe it is. That would tie into the DMT being released into the bloodstream, right, Christos? Perhaps. Little endogenous DMT. Is that the right word? Endogenous? I want to check the weather, because I could be out doing stuff right now instead of in the car. Give me a second. They don't always get the forecast correct. This says 80% chance of rain. It says showers, then chance of thunderstorms. Oh, it's 80% giving way to 50%. And it already, thank you, sir. Yes, salute the OG. That's right. Well, I don't know if I'm assuming you don't give a fuck about sports, but most of the people don't. But if I rattled off to you his sports accomplishments, it's not unimpressive. I'll say that. But yeah. But as more time passes, I'm less and less enamored with all that personally. But see, we might be down to a 50-50 shot, because it's already rained today. But this says showers and possibly a thunderstorm before 11 a.m. Well, it's 8 o'clock. Then a chance of showers and thunderstorms after 11. That's the 50-50, I guess. High near 83. Blah, blah, blah. 80% chance of precipitation, but we already had it. So, what is it going? See, they said half an inch. Now they're saying a tenth to a quarter. So, yeah. Well, I'm probably going to just chill out in the car, because I've already sort of given myself the day off in a way. Let's go to the hourly forecast, see what that says. Yeah, see, they've revised it. When I checked it last night and this morning, they thought there was going to be a lot of rain. Now it says 1/10 of an inch by about noon, then 0.02 inches, then early AM 0.03 inches. So yeah, either way, who cares? Yeah, there you go. That's good enough. Yeah, there's really no reason to go back through the. Well, I didn't play football, but yeah, the famous ancestor. He's not famous anymore because nobody knows who he is, but back in the day, he was famous for football, certainly. What to do? I think I'm good, but I don't know. For all I know, the sun's going to come out, which is fine, but I've already made my preparations. You know what's funny is this is how I ended up in the Salvation Army and getting my CDL was I pitched this tarp in this field, and it's in Austin. The geography of Austin, it's real hard to, because in much of the country, it's pretty easy to find a little patch of woods and string up a tarp, like an A-frame tarp, and sleep under it. So, I had to went to a particular area to be able to pitch my tarp because it was supposed to have like crazy thunder and lightning and like high winds and torrential downpour for like 2 days. And so I was under a tarp for 2 days, and there was bad weather. It just wasn't nearly as extensive as they predicted. And then for some reason, some other fellow, and this is a very human thing, right? This says a lot about NPCs and normies. Some most likely drug addicted homeless person came down there and was just nearby me in that field. And he was big and strong enough I couldn't run him off, And it's almost like he was there just to spite me, right? And I shit you not, when the weather passed, I said, fuck this, I'm going to the Sally. The dude followed me to the Salvation Army, and he was in there like the first couple of nights I was in there. And then he disappeared after that. Unless I hallucinated that. I guess that's possible, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. And I'm not going to get into that level of second guessing, but that was more of a joke than anything else. But, so annoying that he, because he wasn't underneath a tarp or anything. And I guess in the context of all of this, what the church would say or whatever, well, why didn't you, if it was raining and all this, why didn't you let him under your tarp? It's like, well, I mean, there's really not room for two people. I ain't trying to snuggle, and, never actually occurred to me. And I don't know, did he just get rained on? I think maybe he had a tarp, and I think he did the burrito method. I think he burritoed and just rolled up in a tarp. I think that's probably what he did. I'm just guessing. I don't remember. And it's bizarre, man. The whole thing was bizarre. And but that's just humans, man. That's what humans do for whatever reason. And by then, I'd had my fill. He's probably on meth, most likely, among other things. And I really burned out on various aspects of that vagabond lifestyle. Carrying, a big backpack everywhere I went got old, and then dealing with these meth heads got old. And see what the sky looks like. Yeah, we're definitely under threat of rain here, so I'm going to stay where I'm at. But then you have the idea of the blessing in disguise, right? Because I don't know that I would have taken my happy ass to the Sally right at that time. And then to stay in the dorm, to keep staying there, they make you you have to at least go see a caseworker. And then he was like, do you want a job? I was like, and usually I'd be like, no, man, I ain't trying to, no. But I was like, yes, I do. And then he was like, we have a Goodwill case manager. He's here like every Wednesday. Do you want some training? I was like, yeah, I want to get my CDL. And it took a while, but after a few months, Goodwill got me into truck driving school and paid for it. And that's how we got our CDL. And then I found my own job. The case manager wasn't able to get me a job, but I found my own job and worked at the airport. And I worked 21 days in a row until finally they figured out I was just showing up and clocking in and working, and driving rental cars. People would drop off their rental cars, and I would drive them over to the area to get cleaned up. And then once they're cleaned up, you drive them and put them in the spot where they go to get re-rented. And finally, they figured out I was just working every day, and they told me I couldn't do that. But and made enough money to feed myself and get through truck driving school, and then went off to work for Snyder National for 14 months. Or, well, allow them to employ me. I don't work for people, but I let them employ me. Because working for people implies that I have a boss. It's like, well, I don't have a boss. But yeah, I allowed them to employ me. Yeah, good times. Good times. I guess old Freedom Grower found something else to do. I don't know, Christos, if you want to go back earlier in the stream, I don't know, the time codes or whatever, but I feel like I did a pretty good discourse using some of Dick's comments. Some of what I heard yesterday on MMLA, Modern Men Lost Again, I guess that's what that stands for. I'm not trying to be cute, I'm just... Modern Men Lost Again, is that it? Landry? I heard him kind of defending some of Paul Unslaved's actions as well. Maybe he was testing you. Have you ever thought about that? And then I connected that to the biblical story of, air quotes, God, right? Which one? But, whichever Bible, God of the Bible, the one pretending to be the creator of everything. Perhaps pretending. Perhaps LARPing as the creator. Right? Wolf in sheep's clothing. Oh, shit. Now I'm seeing an article, because I read something yesterday about our athletic director. Because, see, I read this article because it seemed weird because our Arkansas's athletic director started talking about, basically, almost just came out and said we're going to have to cheat if we're going to win because of now that you're able to pay the players. And Arkansas culturally is completely against this. So it says Arkansas, I got to read this out loud, so if y'all ain't into sports, I guess just come back later. But I'm certain I'll tie it in with, money and its effects on what's supposed to be amateur, pure, the purity of amateur sports is what it's supposed to be. And then, real quick, I mentioned that historically Arkansas played in the Southwestern Conference and that it was a kind of an open secret that, all that oil money and the Texas money, that pretty much all, and we played all Texas teams. It was all Texas teams and Arkansas. So we were known for not cheating back then. And then, SMU cheated so much, Southern Methodist in Dallas, they got the death penalty. They weren't allowed to have a team and had to start over. They were killed for like 2 years. And, ESPN did a whole documentary about their 30 for 30 series about all the cheating in the Southwest Conference. And Arkansas was known to choose not to cheat, but to still be able to win, if that makes sense. And Arkansas sort of culturally prides ourselves on that to some extent. So it says, Arkansas Director of Athletics Hunter Yurachek set off a firestorm with controversial remarks he made. And I'm going to paraphrase some of this. I'll skip some of it. Razorback fans were already in a raw mood following a loss to Ole Miss, who is a rival, and Arkansas we've beaten them more than they've beaten us historically, and that's kind of a big deal. And then in the old Southwest Conference, we beat all the Texas teams more than they beat us, except Texas, who beat us more than we beat them. So that's our biggest rival, but nobody cares, and it's fine. Yurachek fanned the Flames, and Arkansas is tiny. Like, it's a tiny little state compared to, Dallas-Fort Worth is way bigger than my entire state. Yurachek fanned the Flames when he basically said that Arkansas is set up to compete for national championships in multiple sports, but you can forget about it in football. A lack of money is the issue, he claimed, adding that Arkansas lags behind. He didn't say this directly, but he implied it. A lack of money is the issue, he claimed, adding that Arkansas lags behind the other SEC programs and donor contributions. And this is an acknowledgement that Arkansas in the old days was able to win without cheating like the other teams did. And in fact, Arkansas won the last two Southwest Conference championships in football, 89 and 90. or 88 and 89 or whatever it was. Uh, Without a big change in those dollars, Arkansas cannot compete to be a college football playoff team. And when they say competing for a title, it's not even a national championship. Arkansas's never even won the Southeastern Conference. So, I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. We're not even talking about a national championship. Just win the fucking conference. It's never going to happen, by the way. It's never going to happen. While some fans on social media gave Arkansas's athletic director credit for being honest about this financial issue, others were stunned that he was essentially, and I don't want to get too in the weeds, but we did fire. We had our best season since the 1970s when Lou Holtz was the coach. And if y'all don't know who he is, he was such a famous football coach that he's still on TV to this day as a, giving sports commentary. And he won national championships at Notre Dame but Arkansas fired his ass after he won 11 games. So then Bobby Petrino came to Arkansas, won 11 games for the first time since the 70s, but then he found some sweet young hot piece on campus and had an affair, and then he had a motorcycle wreck with his mistress on the back, and then the state trooper showed up and helped cover it up, and when it all came to light, they fired him, of course. So this is the culture of Arkansas. And I said at the time, Nick Saban was at Alabama. I said, man, Nick Saban could kill somebody on the campus of Alabama, and whatever Alabama fan showed up first would help him bury the body. And this is sort of an acknowledgement of like, this is how much people want to win. And football is like, it's the biggest thing there is in the South. Like, it's the biggest thing. College football is bigger than everything. It's huge. And this does say something about where society is going. So, while some fans on social media gave him credit for being honest, others were stunned that he was essentially relegating the current team to second-rate status, which they are. I mean, they are second-rate at this point, just 3 games into the season, because Arkansas fans are delusional. So, like, Arkansas won the national championship in basketball my freshman year of college, 93-94, and then after the legendary coach got fired, again, the legendary basketball coach got fired, and then, so just like Dallas Cowboys fans, the fans are delusional and think that the team will ever be good again. Well, the team's never any good. They're never going to be good again. Same thing with football. They're never going to be good again. It's just what it is. It's not me being negative. It's just things have changed. They said Yurachek may be correct, they argue, but this is not something the man at the top should be saying publicly, certainly not while the season is still in play. Others made the point that if the University of Arkansas is lagging behind in the kind of money needed to bring, because now you get to pay the players, needed to bring in top football talent, it is Yurachek's fault. A big part of his job is to have the kind of relationship with major boosters and season ticket holders to keep the football program financially competitive. Well, but it's not his fault because culturally Arkansas ain't into that. The rumor mill has kicked, they're not into, if he tries to say we're just going to give $5 million to our freshman quarterback, people from Arkansas are going to be like, what do you mean? He hasn't earned it. How can you give a kid $5 million and he hasn't earned $5 million? Meanwhile, Michigan, I'm pretty sure they just gave some quarterback like $12 million or something, like something crazy. What did this Arch Manning get to go to Texas? See, the rumor mill has kicked into overdrive over the last 48 hours. 2 different sources have told me that Yurachek said what he said because he believes he already has a new job. He's still not going to get fired, though. That's crazy. Maybe he doesn't feel like he can quit. Maybe he doesn't want the heat of... Maybe he is trying to get fired. The SEC announced this week that it will be hiring an associate commissioner for football. Oh, maybe he wants to go into the SEC then. There have been rumors for at least three years that SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey and Yurachek are close, blah, blah, blah. And see, this says something about, serving this system of business. And this is a business. College football is a business. The University of Arkansas is a business, right? The Southeastern Conference is the biggest business in college football at the level of being a conference. And let's not forget that the SEC only exists in its current form because Arkansas chose to leave the old Southwest Conference and join the SEC in the late 80s and the early 90s. And that was when Frank Broyles was this legendary athletic director, and he was a legendary college football coach at Arkansas, and he's the one that fired Lou Holtz. So, all these dynamics are at play. Does Arkansas's current athletic director already know that he will get that job? ? Maybe, but a search firm has been hired to help the SEC find the best. Well, they always hire a search firm. That's just normal. And some speculate from the job description that Nick Saban would be, well, Nick Saban's not going to want to do that. That's not going to happen. Anyway, this is just a bunch of. I'm not even going to read the rest of it. So that's interesting. And just the this is what we call a moral hazard, right? It's business in a realm in which everything is based on business transactions. Can a human being have authority? Can a human being exercise their own integrity, their own morality, their own honesty, and still get ahead? And what I've said is anybody who's getting ahead in the current system of things is doing so through unethical, immoral, fraudulent, and or illegal means. So the fact that this guy's only been Arkansas's athletic director for like 5 years or whatever it is, and Jeff Long lost his job because he mishandled the Bobby Petrino deal when Petrino was fired following the controversy and the cover up of his affair, and then the motorcycle wreck, and a state trooper probably lost his career over it. Again, people behaving in illegal, immoral, unethical, and you know, fashion, right? Meanwhile, Bobby Petrino is back at the university. So Hunter Yurachek allowed the current coach at Arkansas, Sam Pittman, to hire Bobby Petrino as the offensive coordinator, in some way signaling a commitment to winning. And I would view that as the first step to say, now some in Arkansas will view that as a redemption. They'll say, well, he got humbled. He went through this process. He, claimed to, renew his vows to his wife. He humbled himself, and he's from Butte, Montana, which is interesting because that's where, Petrino is. And that's where Evil Knievel's from. And he does seem to kind of share that Evil Knievel swagger, old Petrino. And Arkansas fans love that. You talk about Nick Saban, and when Arkansas was winning 11 games and Petrino was battling Nick Saban, they had there was CBS was broadcasting the game, and you got Bobby Petrino on the sidelines, and he loved Arkansas, and he's in Razorback red, and he's literally on the sidelines cussing Nick Saban out from the other, he's pointing at Nick Saban and cussing him out, and Arkansas loves that kind of thing. And that was when Nick Saban was still at LSU. And just Arkansas people love that kind of thing. It's very much the spirit of Arkansas. It's one of the most Arkansas things ever. So, they kind of love this redemption arc of, well, he's accepted. He took ownership of his mistakes. What they don't like is a Hunter Yurachek, kind of snake in the grass, saying, well, I've done my job. I've got all these sports set up, but then you folks are, stuck in the old ways and don't want to, I already know you're going to freak the fuck out if I try to give some college freshman $5 million to come here and play football. Everybody's going to freak the fuck out and say, how dare you do this? They haven't earned it, right? Meanwhile, again, Nick Saban, once he started winning at Alabama, he could have done damn near anything and they wouldn't have fired him. And I didn't want Petrino fired, but at a certain point, he listen to this, he hired her. He met this lady because her and her husband worked for the university. So he broke up her family. He wrecked her marriage, and then he used university funds to hire her to work for him, and he gave her like $10,000 of his own money that he got from his salary. Right? This is all things where Arkansas people are like, "Oh hell no, you ain't from here, Jack." And it sounds like something Evil Knievel might do, other than maybe be foolish enough to even agree to restrict himself to one vagina in the first place, right? But it's fascinating, this is some sort of, this has to be some kind of archetypical, very human story, I would think. Yeah, it's crazy, man. And then if Pittman got fired, would Petrino, would they make him the head coach? I would say, well, why can he be the offensive coordinator if they're not going to let him be the head coach? Like that doesn't even make sense. There you go. Christo says I'm 6 minutes behind catching up like Sean. Like pineal power. There you go. Yeah, that's funny, man. Again, waking dreams, surrealistic notions of unreality, right? Deja vu all over again style. Well, anyway, I think we're on to the non-tent portion of the broadcast. So, if y'all got other things to do, of course, you never know what you might miss around these parts. But let's see. Woo! Powerful healing in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus. I'll tell you what, though, if y'all want to hear something, man, I on my post tab is a stream from BJ Investigates, her backup channel called That Surprise Witness. It's a live stream. It's called No Jumper Cast So Mad at Me, LOL live reaction. That's one of the best streams I've ever heard, man. It's fucking incredible. It takes a little while to get going, and without knowing some of the backstory, it's a little tough. But dude, that's worth your time, right there. And then all of these people she's reacting to are tied up with this No Jumper. Does anybody know No Jumper? If you don't know what No Jumper is, that's at Adam 22, and his wife, who's they do porn, they do podcasting, and he's somehow insinuated himself. And his name. Listen to this. His name is Adam Grandmason, but it's spelled Maison, and he comes from a prominent family in the Northeast, and I'm assuming they're Masons, right? But whatever. I mean, it's not even that. And dude, there's a lot of lore around all of this. So it's one of the best streams I've ever heard ever. But what was I doing? Oh yeah, the batteries, 41%. Yeah, we're good. So, but yeah, I'm gonna make some more eggs so I can have my my next meal after that. Getting a little hungry. If y'all got anything, feel free to leave it down in the comments. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for any donos that folks may feel like kicking my way. Again, as always, not necessary, but always appreciated. Always appreciated. Ooh, and do we go more, I do have some dark chocolate. I think we do. I think we go dark chocolate first. This is not quite my 100%. This is 90%, but it'll do in a pinch, as they say. Is the sun gonna come out? I'm a little disappointed. I was ready for a rainy day, man. It's a ripoff. I think, if you ask me, I think it's done for the day, and it's going to come back in the early morning. But who knows? God, whatever that is. If that's a thing. It's only a 50% chance tonight. And then 30% tomorrow. I think we're done, but fuck it. We'll do it live. Can't really see anything, huh? Oh, we're down to 20%. Yeah, I got to end it because I'm down to 20% on this phone. Thanks for watching. Bye.